You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. Welcome back to the Betoota Advocate radio show. You're joined by myself, Clancy Overall, editor of the Betoota Advocate, and of course Errol Parker, editor at large. And today's guests actually come from Betoota's closest capital, would you believe, as the crow flies. Adelaide.
And as the car drives.
As the car drives, technically.
Yeah, just down the Birdsville track.
Adelaide is closer to Betoota than Brisbane. A lot of people don't realise that. We haven't taken it as far as Broken Hill and pushed our clocks back half an hour. But yes.
No, even though we are further west than Broken Hill.
Yeah, we do feel culturally aligned with you lot. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's guests. They are the original Adelaide family murderers. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Bevan couldn't make it today. He's still awaiting parole. But this is the antique clock dealer, the hairdresser, David St. David, and I'm the surgeon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we know with the family murders, there was a surgeon involved.
Yes, there was. And it is rumoured that in the car park of Calvary, North Adelaide, there used to be an outdoor morgue, as they made them in the good old days. And that is rumoured to be the place where some of the cut-ups got done.
All right. Really? Fuck, Adelaide's a twisted and dark and beautiful place. Thank you for joining us, Bad Dreems.
It's been such a crucible of Australian music for years.
Yes.
I mean, you know, like it gave rise to the Australian hip-hop movement.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it also...
On the hills.
It gave birth to Cold Chisel.
Yep.
It's the place where
Would
bands
Cold
start.
Chisel be Australia's kind of incarnation of reggae, even? There's little reggae undertows.
Look, I wouldn't say
Northern
that, no.
soul.
That's like saying that Nick Cave is just, you know, like he was in charge of a ska band.
They do get a bit funky sometimes, the Chisel.
Yeah, mate, that era of pub rock, Men at Work sounded like Jamaicans.
Yeah. It's because they were all too good at playing their instruments. Like as Don Walker said on your show the other week, it was like 10 years before they even got a skerrick of a record deal.
Yeah.
They've been playing 17 gigs a week. Like this basic 3-chord stuff becomes pretty boring. So Mossy's started like playing some, you know,
Steel drums.
Steel drums and bloody yeah.
Anyway, we're not talking about music as of yet, except for Work Cold Chisel reggae. I want to talk to today's guests about everything that's been happening. They had... Well, you're on the media junket now, Bad Dreems. Thank you for joining us. How are you feeling post those 3 years that were actually one very long year and one very inactive year? You guys are looking pretty fit for musicians coming out of a pandemic.
We ate Hungry Jacks and Euros yesterday. Lots of chips. Now, very relieved off the back end of everything. This album's been a long time in the making. Long
You
road
quickly
to
forget
hoo-ha.
how shit lockdown was.
Oh, yeah.
He was second longest lockdown in the world behind Argentina, and he copped the brunt of it in Melbourne.
Yeah, you were the 300 Days of Summer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He lost it.
Yeah.
In a
I
share
would
house
have.
in Richmond. It was it was tough on.
I would have been down there with the
mind.
CFMEU. I would have lost my mind jumping on cars.
Yeah, it was. That's how it felt. Like you were your mind was slowly eroding. I think you get some sort of vitamin D sort of deficiency or something as well. Like I felt like I was hallucinating a lot of the time. It was awful.
Are you taking in too much information too?
Yeah.
Like at least when
Doom-
you're working,
doom
you're
scroll.
You
doom
watch the-
scrolling.
Yeah, you watch the press
there
conference
is-
every morning and
There is absolutely no reason for any of us to know who the premier of fucking Tasmania
well,
is.
yeah, exactly.
Except like
Now we all
in the
know
middle
all
of
of them.
lockdown, it's like, oh God, I hope the Peter Gunn one doesn't give us bad news today.
Yeah, the particle count on that N95 mask is nowhere near adequate for this stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, I was actually thinking a lot of great band names came out of COVID-19. That's the one silver lining. Mutant Strain.
Mutant strain.
Yeah. The Contact Tracers.
Yep.
Festering orifice of doom.
Yeah.
Aerosolized.
Yeah. The Avalon Cluster. I actually think the best one's the Ruby Princess. That'll be a great one in years to come.
Yeah.
It's got to be a bit longer than now, though. It's got to be 10 years from now before we can deal with that and look at it ironically. But let's rip the bandit off. How many gigs got cancelled, do you reckon, all up for you boys?
Well, we had a whole regional tour, and that was huge as well.
Well, we were in the UK when it happened.
yeah.
So all of the rest of the UK tour.
So
We
you-
just spent all that money on.
The last 2 gigs you ever played, you infected about 500 people.
Hopefully, yeah.
I was thinking 1,000, but
Did you have to do hotel quarantine on the way back?
Yeah.
No, that was
Oh,
before
it
anyone
was-
even knew what was
yeah.
going
Oh,
on.
right,
right.
Four
So you-
hotels, yeah.
Yeah.
Just had to do it at home.
Yeah,
They just
right.
gave you one A4.
I remember that
all
one.
day.
Yeah, just stay at home
Yeah,
and-
it was very loose at the time. Very loose instructions.
yeah.
Yeah, but we were halfway through a frosty Guinness. Actually, probably a room temperature Guinness in Manchester, I think. And our manager was like, "Get in the car, go straight to Heathrow. It's on." And
Really?
yeah. I remember thinking at the time that it was, perhaps it was on.
Apocalyptic.
Perhaps it was apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
It
if
was
you-
a bit
If
exciting.
you've
Yeah.
got to put down a Guinness,
The suspense was
Like-
That's exactly what I thought
Yeah.
too. I'm like, I'm so glad I buried those guns instead of having to hand them back to John Howard.
yeah, I know.
Like,
I'll do well in
The
this.
end has come.
I don't love back bets. I was ready for the long haul.
No,
Well, and then how long into the depravity of 300 days in lockdown and were you guys in Adelaide?
I was in Adelaide.
Yeah. How long until you actually started making music that you were willing to put on an album?
I got back and I was like, 2 weeks
Yeah.
locked down. This is awesome. I'm going to go King Giz on this and record 17 albums.
Yeah.
And after about 5 days in, I was like, this is fucking rubbish.
Yeah.
And it was quite hard to be creative without having the requisite inspiration
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the outside world. So in actual fact, kind of this album was put together after we got out.
Yeah, for sure.
And we started playing, once we were able to start playing some shows, we were like, oh yeah, this is what it's all about.
Yeah.
We did do some other recordings, demos, but they just didn't translate to what we wanted to do once we got back together.
Well, I want to go back to, we'll talk about the new album in a bit, but I want to go back to the start. Where did you guys meet? Are you like one of those freaky kind of BG families, or are you out of Hillsong, like the rest of the music industry, or are you...
It was a cult.
We actually met at a football club, but there's a disclaimer to that in that it is an old scholars football club. So we'd all gone to the same school.
All right.
Hackney Road High School is what it's known as. And I was quite a bit older than these guys. And so I actually knew Miles' dad because he was the music teacher at the school.
Right.
And I'd played the violin in the orchestra, strongly like leading the second violin section. And then I'd moved back to Adelaide from Melbourne, playing some fairly rudimentary seconds football. Ben was dominating in the A grade.
Guilty.
Miles was known throughout the league as the arrow in the C grade comp. And we every night
I
we'd go
wasn't
to
the
this.
type to frequent training. So.
Nah, it was a really good. It just happened to be a very good club where at the time we'd go to this place called the Barn, get wasted afterwards, smoking darts outside, and started talking to these guys about music and they were sort of in.
And real quiet, like, you guys play music?
Yeah. Because it's not. Yeah. It's not. It's kind of. Yeah, you don't want to show your cards too early in a footy club because it could really. Yeah, you could really be outed as a musician.
You have to bring out like a kind of Tenacious D cover at a Sunday kick on, and then they know you can
start
play
with
guitar.
like that,
We
the
get
Holy
pretty quiet
Grail
that
song,
we were players at high school.
and then realised these were some good lads, and we started. One of the other guys at the footy club, Sharpie, his dad owned a fridge warehouse.
All right.
And he let us just rehearse in there.
Sharp Electrical, yeah.
Yeah, Sharp Electrical over the river from the West End Brewery.
Okay, because I've wondered about that. I've seen the imagery.
Yeah.
West
Yes,
End.
we stole it.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's very,
Ruthlessly.
very South Australian. And then, so in this day and age, how do you, I guess, make it out of Adelaide? How do you do it nowadays? We've spoken to all those old 10-pound pommy or pub rock guys. Basically, for them, it was tour every single rural town in Australia until you burn out and land in Sydney. How did you do it?
Well, I'll tell you how we did it. First of all, we got rejected by the scene in Adelaide because they didn't like us. And
play football?
There was only it was sort of.
Exactly.
There was only one pub in which to play, really, and we got kind of rejected from them because we weren't cool enough. And then I used one of my few music industry connections to plead with Johnny Mackay from Children Collide to be allowed onto his tour, and he relented, and we were placed first on a 30-date Children Collide tour where they were trying to sort of prop up their slightly ailing career. And we got paid $100 a show and had to load the whole lighting rig and their backline.
So you were bumping in and out.
And that actually ended. Marway was one of the premier amateur league footballers in the state. And he did his knee. He did it at the Standard here. We had to carry this stuff up. There was this venue called the Standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very steep stairs. He did his back, never been the same since, and he did his knee. Fucked up his footy career.
And mine.
Yeah, well, look at me now, boys.
Gave you no choice, really.
And so, 30 days, nearly, well, obviously.
So 30 dates, $100 a gig.
Yeah, they were
between
managed,
three, yeah?
They were managed by this industry legend, Razor Ray Harvey, living end manager, real hard operator.
Yeah.
We were like, can we please not go to Toowoomba or Bunbury because we don't have any money and you're paying us $100 a gig? She's like, you either fucking do all the gigs, lads, or you're fucking off the tour. So like, okay, fine.
June Rats were doing the tour.
June
as
Rats,
well.
they were the,
We booked like caravan park bungalows, and then June Rats, who hadn't booked anything, would stay on the floor in our $50 bungalow, which our whole show fee went on anyway. They wouldn't remember the tour anyway. But.
So there's two ways of doing this. It's freak out, or just don't book anything and then shack up with the dudes who've blown all their money on it.
Yeah, but no, I mean, in all seriousness, it was very nice of them to have us on that tour, and that's how we got out of Adelaide.
Really?
Slept on
Yeah.
a lot of people's floors and had some very early flights.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, well, that is intense. You've done
Yeah.
the work. In 30 days, you did the work required, really.
Big time.
How long after that did the album come out? Or the album had been written at that point?
Oh no, this is
Yeah.
a few years, and then we did a few other things. We've always had peaks and troughs, you know. Something good would happen, then there'd be a disaster. And one of we got early on BT from Love Police, who we're still working with, legend of the game. He hooked us up to support the Black Keys, and we're like, yeah, fucking, we've done it, fellas. We're breaking through.
Stadiums. Yeah.
Then the Black Keys guy bloody does his shoulder.
Where are you living then? What's happening? You
No,
back
we're
in
all
Adelaide?
still in Adelaide.
Yeah.
We put out our first EP kind of ourselves, got a bit of a spin on the various radio stations, and then we met up with Mark Opitz, the Prince of Capri, as he calls himself. At the time, we thought it was a massive coup getting this legend of Australian music production to work with us, which it was.
And
He's
decorated.
Decorated.
Yeah.
He cut his teeth producing working on AC/DC with Vanda and Young. Did the Angels breakthrough album. Did Cold Chisel. Did the Models. Did In Excess. Like every second or third song on Triple M is Opitz. And so we started recording with him. That went pretty well, and then we got a deal from Ivy League, who are from Sydney here, and then did an album. And then we just kind of kept on stumbling forward from there, never making any great leaps.
You're really painting a beautiful picture of the last
Well,
decade.
it's good to hear the grind, you know what I mean? Because you look at Don Walker, he can kind of glaze over that because he's got such a long career, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even he talked about 10 years. I think you asked him, he's like, 10,
What do you say?
10 years.
Toenail clipping sandwiches.
Yeah, it's like 10 years. We had nothing.
Yeah.
Every record label
Yeah,
rejected
yeah.
us.
And then you
I
interview
mean,
someone like Guy
I mean-
Sebastian who's kind of like can't explain how it's happened.
Yeah, like I've gone from indoor cricket to being a pop star in just 5 months.
I mean, in all seriousness, you'd have some W's and L's. Like, we were lucky enough that some people played the music on the radio and people were interested in it, but it also wasn't a great time for 5 white middle class guys making pretty straight ahead rock and roll to be supported by the industry.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
nor should it be. That
Yeah.
stuff's been done to death. So, but yeah, it's never really been about like we all just knew that we were never going to make money from this, so kept our jobs.
So
and-
you're like the old tent boxes, right? Like they keep them on the road, they keep them just pissed enough to get to the next town, and they get pissed enough, and then they wake up dusty enough to pack up the truck and keep moving.
It's pretty much it. There's always just enough of a sniff of glory to keep us going.
Dangling the carrot.
Yeah.
So, what did a life in music, in essence, prevent you from doing? What would you be doing now, you think?
Well, I'd hope that I would have had some type of life partner and family apart from 2 cats.
he's bucking it on. Yeah.
But I'd like a red brick in Glenelg.
Well, yeah, I
Rewarding
mean,
career in Prospect.
Winery, maybe.
no, I
Land
think
Rover.
music, for me, music saved me. I mean, I was studying, when I first got into music before this band in a serious way, I was studying medicine in Melbourne, very much.
Be a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, and I was, playing footy, and my entry into the music community kind of opened up my world and changed the trajectory of my life in a good way.
Yeah.
And was the footy thing serious?
Yeah,
Was that-
if I didn't do music, I probably would be some like 31-year-old fuckboy in the amateur league still playing.
Nice. Yeah. Like $500 a match.
Yeah.
The footy thing is, I mean,
Ben was bloody good.
Yeah, when in the midst of that Children Collide tour, it was the top amateur level in. Well, it's called amateur, but it's people are paid in Adelaide, and the team, our club, and the team that he was in won the thing.
Yeah.
Which is for a school team was quite historical because usually all the suburban clubs that were funded by pokey money would win. So Ben was.
You did it on chook raffles.
Yeah, and Ben played which AFL you played with the Motlops and.
Josh Carr punched me in the stomach one time.
Okay. You got some stripes. So I guess it's like that thing, right, where you have one night. What was the one night where it was like the loosest night of your lives? You're surrounded by heroes and you didn't pay for a thing.
Oh,
Do you remember that moment?
Oh, there's been a few. That's what keeps you going. Yeah. Liam Gallagher.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no, Doherty. Pete Doherty.
Pete Doherty.
Yeah. Okay.
Fuck.
This is a story worth telling.
This is the sniff of glory. We need to hear
being
about
the
it.
age we are, the Libertines were pretty seminal for all of us, and we were playing at a festival here called Austin City Limits or Sydney City Limits, and the Libertines were about a band after us. So it was quite early on in the day. We're sitting around, and in walks the Libertines' sons. Pete Doherty. And they were lovely guys, like Carlos Barat came up and had a chat. There weren't many people around at this stage. The other guys, Gary Powell and John Hassel and stuff. And anyway, so we're like, where's Pete? And they're like, oh, yeah, we haven't seen him since we picked him up for rehab on the way over here from Thailand, but we haven't seen him since he got off the plane. We're a bit worried. We're like, oh, shit. So I'll hand over the story at this point.
Well, yeah, they were starting to get fairly stressed. We started to load our gear onto the stage, and the guitar tech was playing a lot of Pete's parts, and we sort of like, oh yeah, that's music when the lights go out or whatever. And he said, well, yeah, I've got to learn them because if you either, you know what I mean?
If he's not better
From behind the curtains, he might have to. He might have to pull out a few numbers.
I think even when he did appear, he had to play it.
Yeah, well, and it was probably like an hour before they were supposed to go on, and they were a huge, pull for the festival. And he eventually rocked up, and from what we understand, has a friend or that deals in a certain type of way that. As soon as he gets into Kingsford Smith, he goes, and whether he comes back in time or not is sort of a toss of a coin.
And he was looking shocking.
When he rocked up, he was wearing this Argentina soccer top, which he said was Maradona's. And we don't know if that's true, and then he had like these sort of trackies and these like shoes with like no laces to account for his, for lack of a better word, cankles.
Yeah.
Because
he was pretty bloated.
He was pretty bloated. He was in pretty bad shape. I mean, of his history with drugs and all that kind of stuff. But I've got to say, he was like absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
But he kept like, it was a bit Brent-like. When we were talking to him backstage, we were sharing one of those backstage demountables sort of thing, and he's like sort of, because he's such a fan of literature, like he'd come up and say like, want to talk about literature, but he would open by just saying the line from the book that he fancies,
course, yeah.
and then
Very thespian behaviour.
So he'd come up to you and be like, "With wind comes change," and then you'd be like confused, and he'd be like, "Do you read Hemingway?" And him being an idol, which I don't, him being an idol of mine, I was like, yeah, of course, mate, all the time.
I'm going to start treading water here.
And then he'd go into some Sylvia Plath and that kind of thing, and it was just like, he's a very, very strange guy, but like, got to say, they were really, really lovely.
Part of the story, or is that too?
I don't think so. Yeah.
Did you partied with him?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's all we need to hear.
No, Pete partied.
Let's just say there was. Let's just say there was some pizza
hard
in the backstage area, and he was very hungry, and he was offered a slice, and then he's like, "That pizza was fucking good. Can you?" To the guy, it wasn't our stuff. He's like, to the guy that owned the pizza, he's like, "Can you get me 30 more of them?" And the guy was also a massive Libertines fan. He's like, sure. And then he was met with this massive predicament of having to procure 30 gourmet pizzas, which is...
and not knowing if it's getting paid for.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, bless.
Or what flavours.
Yeah.
Get me 30 of these.
So I want to hear about Warumpi. Did you work with those guys? That was a hell of a cover. And it did take us back to that kind of Keating era rock. You know that?
Oh, yeah.
fucking, you know,
Keating
you know,
era,
like that. And the M's are big on this too. Like, you forget that kind of goanna. The way you guys played it was different to the way Warumpi Band played. You played it like the White Boys played back then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which was a real throwback.
No, we didn't have any collaborate. I mean, George has passed away. I did reach out to Neil Murray, and he kind of wasn't that interested,
To work on it, yeah.
but gave us his blessing. We worked with, there was the lads from Mumbarley, who are from a band from Groot Island up northeast Arnhem, and then Emily Wurramara, who's also from Groot Island originally, and then, of course, Big Pete stepped in. Didn't come to any rehearsals, just rocked up, nailed it on the day. But it was that song, I totally agree with that description of that song. It's this part of Australian 80s rock, which is kind of, I feel it's exotic in a way.
Yeah.
It's got chorusy guitars. It's got those elements of singing about quite poignant issues.
Yeah.
So we really want to do it justice. And I have to say, getting Garrett, but getting those lads from Mumbarley, who are amazing musicians, amazing stories. And I asked them, we got to spend a few days with them, and we were having some beers the night after. And obviously it takes a bit of time to build rapport with guys from the community like that. And I said, what was the melody you sang in that bit, Brad? And he's like, that was, I said, was that just improv? Or he's like, no, that was a traditional songline.
Right.
And I said, what was it? And he's like, that's called a flag song, and that was written by my ancestors when they first saw the Macassan ships on the horizon, because the Groot Island is relatively unique in that they were trading like treepang and stuff with the Macassans before they saw any whites. Yeah. And when you listen, and that's similar to a lot of the melodies the community bands use. They're these melodies. Some of them are even old. Some of them are probably like 10,000 years old, and you can hear it in the melody. My mind was blown when I heard that.
Yeah, you thought they were just riffing.
It was.
Just go with it, bro.
And then, so I want to kind of talk about where you're at now. Hoo-Ha.
Yeah.
We played footy with a bloke called Hoo-Ha.
Yeah.
He was Vietnamese. We were saying his name wrong.
Fart? Was he
I suppose we can say it now, but like it was in cults. Obviously, there's an age cut off. And we asked how old he was, and he goes,
He was much older than most of the Prem graduates.
I'm 26.
He ran sideways.
Yeah.
But shout out Hoo-Ha,
Yeah.
by the way. You'll probably be listening to this. I want to talk about first of all, we've got the vinyl here. Listeners, you can't see this. But there's a little
you
bit of
will soon.
Nicholson going on the front cover here.
A little bit.
Well, actually, it's
It's
a direct rip-off,
It's
yeah.
It's an
It's
adaptation.
Here's Johnny. We've got Here's Johnny on the front. Ben, we've got you doing Here's Johnny. That's fucking scary. How did you do that?
That was,
Are you mid-bender? Was that something
No,
going
no.
on?
Well, I had a few wines, let's say. But that was
You
shot.
can see the teeth.
No, that was done in post.
If you scratch his tongue, it's one of those scratch and sniff things. Here's taste stale red wine.
That was Merlot. That was shot by a creative director for the album who we employed the services of. Still haven't paid him, probably never will.
Yeah.
McLean Stevenson, I don't know if you heard of him, but he's been a long-time collaborator. And that was shot in a warehouse or a loft in St. Peter's in Sydney.
Right.
On a very wet weekend, the day after we did the film clip for Mansfield 6.0. So I had sort of dirt from the street, rubbed it over my face, and he was just sort of told me to chop through a door and
Yeah, he
go
actually
for it.
chopped that.
Oh, you
hole
did
in
it?
the door.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the inside you can see him with the axe.
Yeah.
Okay, right. And is this symbolic of what we're going to hear on this album?
I guess
you
so.
You losing your mind in a winter home, and
Yes.
trying to kill your whole family?
Yes, pretty
Okay.
much. Exactly right.
Yeah, we talked a lot about channeling certain characters
Yeah,
in some of
right.
the songs, and they were like De Niro and Taxi Driver. Bad
Oh,
Boy,
the pandemic was dark, boy. We got De Niro.
Bad Boy Bubby.
Keep going.
Serious.
Keep going.
Brando in Apocalypse
Oh,
Now.
yes.
Oh, and Dennis Hopper, but
And Dennis Hopper, the Doctor from Wake in Fright. Yeah.
Yeah.
just channeling those warped characters.
Yeah,
that see
yeah.
the world,
Rasputin.
that see the world in a different way.
Yeah. Well, that's perfectly articulated on the cover. What else is going on in the album? What else are you feeling, and what else are you doing musically that might be different from Gutful?
Well, musically, I think it's just more cohesive, and it's probably the first album where we've actually listened to it back and be like, yeah, that's what we sound like. And I think that is due in large part to Dan Luscombe, who was the producer, and Andrew Idgie, who was the engineer. Luscombe, a legend of Australian music, he basically has played with any idol that you can name from Melbourne, from the last 20 years. And he's a musician first, become a producer, done, Amel,
Same.
the Drones,
Yep.
Courtney Barnett.
And he was just very good at getting us to stop overthinking it and just get it done,
Yep.
Yeah.
which is what our music should be like.
Yep.
Instead of overthinking it or trying too hard.
Is that the music students in you reckon?
No. Oh, it's probably the. What is it in it? It's probably just the care. I mean, we care about it deeply.
Yep.
And you want to try and make it good, but sometimes pushing too hard can round the edges of things and take away the immediacy of what rock and roll is.
Yeah, you don't need to render every brick.
Nah,
No.
especially in the studio, because you can spend forever there and go all Pink Floyd on things, but that's not what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And then, I guess, lyrically, I think there's something about Australia that certain things that we just find interesting or funny, and I think that's why we like your stuff. I think there's something similar there, and sometimes it's a little bit hard to explain why
Yeah.
that is. But for example, like Mansfield, guys in high vis protesting about having to have a free vaccine, who then get on the beers and on the lines and end up going on a riot through the city and dancing on the Westgate to Seven Nation Army. And at the same time, an earthquake happens. I was like,
That was so good.
I don't know how to... if you don't find that really funny and very distinctly Australian, it's hard to...
Yeah.
You got to be in on the joke. You got to understand the
and
joke to reckon with it,
Australians, there's no... Like, we don't know what our pressure valve is, and that's what that was, you know what I mean? Like, we're going to go do coke in the city and destroy our own trade union.
Yeah. And on one level it's hilarious, but on another level it's also really interesting.
Yeah.
It's like, how do these guys, the trade unions who once represented some of the most important progressive things that happened, become a hotbed of like conspiracy theory roid boys.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it is funny that because people, and that's another thing, right? People will just look past that. Like, that happened one day. Everyone was wild on Twitter about it, and people were making a big deal of it for a day, and then you just don't want to talk about it again because it was just so. It really highlights some sort of cultural kind of, not cringe, but cultural kind of deficit. That
It was.
we had.
It wasn't. I remember that it wasn't too many steps removed from the storming of the Capitol.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, this shit exists out there.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting to explore. And as like a band of white males, it's a lot of that stuff is kind of, white males that have grown up in footy clubs.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff that's why.
Well, it needs
that's
to be
why
you
it's-
guys that interrogates it, right? It can't be anyone outside of that interrogating.
Well,
it.
people outside can interrogate it, but I think maybe we have more of a captive audience because it's like we're looking at it partly at ourselves.
Yeah, and you've lived it. I do find that quite interesting that you guys would feel like outsiders in a sense, and you haven't said that, but I reckon you would in a sense in music, because you've come from a very mainstream upbringing. So for you guys to interrogate it is actually doing everyone who you feel outsiders to a favour, in a sense.
Well, and it's also, I think it's taken 4 albums for people to start to get it, and probably it's delivered better now, but it is confusing for people. It's like these guys are singing, like in that Mansfield song, dancing on the Westgate, having a beer.
Sorry, I'm from
waiting
Adelaide,
for the
dancing.
show.
Yeah.
Dancing.
And it's like,
chanting.
on one level, people can just hear the loud rock music and hear that, and they're like, it's fucking there, have a few frosts with the lads, but really, that's not particularly the message that we're intending. But at the end of the day, the message is whatever people choose it to be.
Sometimes you do get lucky as well with lyrics. Like, we've got a song on there called See You Tomorrow, and there were lyrics about it's going to be a big year for Koshy, going to be a big year for News Corp.
Yeah.
And literally, when we released that song, that week was all the shit with Koshy came out.
Yeah.
They were like,
the submarines.
The submarines. Rupert Murdoch's at the front of his own media. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just sort of It all
Yeah.
fell in a row.
Yeah,
Pulsar
yeah.
did really
Yeah,
well.
Pulsar's having a great year.
Yeah,
I remember-
and it's got to come from Adelaide boys firing shots at Koshy
Yeah.
and Rupert because
Yeah, yeah.
you know that's your mob.
I remember once Gareth Lydiard said when he was coming up with the drones and the songs he was writing, he wanted it to be like Bob Dylan meets Black Flag. And with Bad Dreams, I think what we tried to do and have tried to do is it's music for people that like football and poetry.
Yeah.
And the best and don't fit particularly in either of those two worlds,
Yeah.
but you can appreciate where those things come together.
Yeah. I mean, that,
Like David Pocock.
yeah.
Perfect example.
But I mean, David Pocock. I mean, you know, he had the rig and the fucking skills to be able to say that. There's a lot of blokes in every footy club who won't say that until you fucking pull them aside, or
Yeah.
as you guys met, standing in the smoking area. Well, you fucking,
Yeah. Do you guys read the AFR?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys, yeah.
Are you a monthly subscriber?
So who's your hottest 100? Well, good on you, boys. You've certainly done that. I can tell you, as two journalists who examine and interrogate the base ourselves, we can see you in the Venn diagram well and truly. So congratulations on this. What album number is this? This is on paper, like
4.
Album 4.
Album 4, but there's EP at the start.
there was an EP at the start. Let's go through the tour dates for him now.
Oh, yeah. So you're on the 23rd of June, hometown show at the Hindley,
Only Street
news.
Musical,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Big one.
New Street.
Spent a lot of hours there in the wee hours.
Yeah.
So,
Well, as if you haven't spent enough hours in Richmond, you're going back to the Richmond Hotel on the 24th.
yeah, well, exactly,
Corner
yeah.
Hotel.
At the corner
Hotel.
hotel.
And then it'll be a lock-in
And then,
this time, not a
Yeah,
lockdown.
I've still got PTSD from that whole
And then
area. So.
up to Brisbane, going to the Triffid, one of the great venues that out there in
The
Newstead.
Hangar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out to Hutchinson Construction.
And then lastly in Sydney on the 1st of July, new financial year at the Factory Theatre in Marrickville.
Yeah, right.
You guys want some tickets?
Yeah, no, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that off air. We've already got the vinyl sitting in front of us. But yeah, we'll be there and we'll be backstage and we'll be playing up like a bunch of pigs in a footy club fucking
Yeah.
smoking area.
I'm going to turn up there in worse fucking shape than Pete Doherty.
We'll be ordering 30 pizzas backstage. So thank you, gentlemen. Thanks for joining us and all the best with this tour.
Thanks, lads.
mate.
Love what
Thanks,
you
guys.
do.
Love it.
Mate.